here at Big 12 Media Days in Frisco, Texas, day one. And I'm joined by Brien Hanley from the Big 12 Insiders. And you had a chance to talk to folks across the Big 12 network on 24/7 Sports. I'm curious, what were some of your main takeaways from those previews you did?
Yeah, for the most part, a lot of teams, they're really excited because I think everybody believes they have a chance to win, Adam. That's the whole thing. And that's the thing about this conference. Nobody feels like they can't win this thing if they have the right. And, everything has to go right. For certain teams, everything has to go right. But nobody feels like, we don't have a chance this year. We're playing for next year and all. Nobody feels like that. I think that's kind of the excitement of this conference this year.
You can't get away from parity when you talk about the Big
No.
12. We did hear Commissioner Brett Yormark say that ideally it would be great to have a couple programs establish themselves just from a reputation for the conference. I don't know if they're as close as he thinks they are to that, though.
They're not. The one thing about it, and we've talked about this several times on Big 12 Insiders, there's not going to be a blue blood ever in this conference unless a blue blood comes into it, because those things take decades to build. That's not something that's going to happen in the next 2 or 3 years or even 5 or 10 years. It's literally decades of building that brand. However, there can be a leader. For years now, I know Oklahoma is a blue blood, but Oklahoma was the leader of this conference, and people chased them for years. People caught them, but they were able to chase them for years. That's something that the Big 12 actually needs. Now, to your point, I don't think they're there yet, because this thing could be the next 4 or 5 years. It could be a different winner every single year. But he is right. There needs to be somebody that is the lead dog that everybody can go chase. It's going to help not just the conference, but it's going to help nationally, because everybody will be able to see, okay, that's the conference, or that's the team in that conference. And if other teams can rise up to that, then we can start talking about building something within the conference there. But parity is great, but you do need a lead dog.
Yormark said that he felt it was disadvantageous for Arizona State last year to be picked. Kind of just didn't have the respect as a result of that preseason media poll. So what do? They decide not to have a preseason media poll. I will say it was very challenging last year to put that list together. I was close to getting out a coin and flipping it for a couple of those teams down, in the bottom of the conference. So I didn't have a major issue with it, but it definitely brings up a lot of good talking points, and I think that's part of what you miss by not having a preseason media poll.
Absolutely. I mean, they've been doing preseason polls forever, and that's part of it. But he is right. There was a perception problem, because it was, hey, if this team was picked by people that are supposed to know what's going on in the conference last, and they're finishing first, and the teams that were supposed to be finishing first finish last, well, how good is the conference? Well, that's neither here nor there. Just use your eyeballs. And I don't think enough people in the media and when polls and things of that nature, and the CFP, I don't think they just use their eyeballs to just say, oh, that's a good football team. I don't care where they were picked. It doesn't matter, especially in the transfer portal and all this stuff now. Teams are going to be different, Adam, from year to year. Judge them based on year to year. And that's why, look, the poll, I like doing them. But it does have some merit, saying you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what these teams are going to be with so much turnover every single year. So it makes some sense.
One of the teams I think that would have ranked really high had they done a preseason media poll is Texas Tech.
Yeah.
The Red Raiders spent a lot of money to put this roster together. Are you buying them as one of the top 2 teams in this conference? Are they going to be in the Big 12 championship game?
I don't know about the top 2. I've got them up there. My thing is, we've seen or we've heard Texas Tech is supposed to be good before, and they kind of fell flat on their face 2 years ago. This has got to be, I shouldn't say it's a make or break year that, you're going to fire the coach. I don't mean that. But if you can't win the conference, or at least be in the conference championship game with this amount of depth, paying this much for a roster, then when are you going to be? So it's more of a, I'm not knocking them and saying they can't, but it's more of a, let's wait and see. I need to see it. And their schedule early is challenging. Like, we're going to know early on in Tech's conference schedule whether or not they have the opportunity, or the ability, I should say, to get to Arlington.
Obviously, Arizona State's another intriguing team in this conference. Scatterboo was the heart and soul of that
was.
football team last year. I've spent this whole offseason talking about Colorado and how it's difficult it's going to be to replace Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. Well, they're bringing a lot of talent back in Tempe, but man, that was just such a luxury, and a guy that could just kind of impose his will on other teams.
Yeah, I mean, he was the heart and soul. He was special to that team, to that university, and you can't replace that. You're not going to replace it. Even if you replace the production, you're not going to replace just what he meant to that football team. Having said that, I've talked to several people there. The mindset is we left one on the table last year in the college football playoff. They bring a lot back. They brought in new guys, and their mentality is that we could have kept playing. We should have done more. And so that's why I believe they're still going to be at the top of this thing. Now, granted, I mean, everything can change. You got to get luck with injury history or injuries and that sort of thing. But they felt like they left a lot of meat on the bone last year. That's their mentality, that they were not satisfied.
You played at Kansas State in the late 90s. How are the Wildcats looking from your vantage point?
They're going to be okay. Here's the thing. I should say better than okay. If they can get their offensive line back to what it was, I'm not saying it has to be the peak of 2022 when they won the Big 12, but it needs to be closer to that. If it can get closer to that, they have an opportunity, Adam, to I don't know if they can run the table, but to be a 10-win football team. They have that ability. Now, again, I'm a lot of ifs and buts there, but they do have turnover on that offensive line. They're young in the defensive backfield, but those guys have ability and experience. With ability and experience, you can teach that. It's the offensive line. I know that's an old cliche to say the offensive line, but it truly is the case in Kansas State because they have the skill positions. They have the front seven on the defense. The back end is learning, but super athletic. If the offensive line can be that, they're going to be there at the end.
Is there a team in this conference, the way you feel, that people are sleeping on, not talking enough about?
Baylor and Utah.
Okay.
I like Baylor, and I know some people are looking at Baylor. Baylor can run the football. It's just a matter, is their defense going to hold up? That's the case. Utah, we saw them come in with a lot of bravado last year and fell flat on their face, quarterback issues. Defense was still good. Quarterback wasn't. They brought in a new quarterback. He came from New Mexico. The offensive coordinator also came to Utah, so it's an easy transition for him. But we'll see. Going from that level of football, group of 5 to Power 4 is different. It's a different level, so we're going to see that. But those are the two teams. I like their makeup and what they bring to the table. If things pan their way, they may be two that are in Arlington at the end of the year.
And I got to ask, where do you think Colorado finishes this season?
Sure. Look, Adam, you know me. I'm a Coach Prom supporter. I always have been. I love how he's trying to do things differently to build his program out of necessity initially, and now it seems like other people are taking what he did and doing it themselves. I love that fact. If they can change or replace, I shouldn't say change, replace quarterback, they've got some stars missing. But if the offensive line, I know I keep going back to that, but if the offensive line can be better, that takes so much pressure off a new quarterback, so much pressure. If they can run for 150, 160 yards a game, that'll change everything for them. It really will, and continue to make the strides on defense like they made last year. Colorado will have a chance. I don't know if they can win the league, but also, Colorado fans, if you win 7 or 8 games, I don't think that's a step back depending on what the team looks like. If they can do the things that I just talked about, but still win 7 or 8 games, to me, that's a step forward. It really is.
And what you just said there about needing to take pressure off that position, that's why I think Caden Salter is going to win the job, because his legs are going to provide a different dimension that they just didn't have. And now it's, I think if you could get Shedeur Sanders for another year of eligibility, you wouldn't even think about it, you'd do it. But I think this is going to be a different look offense than we've seen from Colorado. But how do folks follow all your stuff? Because the Big 12 Insiders is bringing content that goes deeper than a lot of those shows out there. And you do such a great job with it.
I appreciate it. We're on YouTube at Big 12 Insiders. We're on Twitter as well at Big 12 Insiders. I try to pride it on, I'm not a journalist. I'm an old football player that just loves talking football and basketball. But that's where we're at. We're on YouTube. You can find us there.
Awesome. Check out the Big 12 Insiders with Brien Hanley.